Hey, what's going on, guys? Now let's talk about what this patch is actually changing. Because this one is all about tightening up close-range combat and making melee feel powerful without letting it become an all-purpose shortcut. The knife is getting trimmed back a bit, with the maximum lunge distance reduced by about 10% and the targeting angle cut by about 20%. That means you are still going to have that aggressive, up-close threat. But it should take a little more intention to land those lunging hits instead of feeling like the knife automatically reaches everything in the room. That is a big deal for anyone who has been relying on fast gap closing to win fights before the other side can react. Bubble Shield is also getting a serious rethink. Its rarity is moving up from Deluxe Blue to Superior Purple, which already tells you the game is treating it like a more premium piece of gear now. On top of that, its bubble HP is being reduced by 33%, so it is not going to soak up quite as much punishment as before. But there is a twist here. It is no longer vulnerable to Vault weapon damage, and its resistance to UESC damage is going up by 17%. So the shield is becoming more specialized. It is weaker in raw health, but better in certain matchups, which makes it feel less like a simple brute force defensive bubble, and more like a tool you will want to think carefully about before throwing into a fight. The biggest combat change for runners is probably the melee damage stat adjustment. Bonus melee damage from that stat is being reduced from a maximum of 100% down to 50% against enemy runners, while damage against non-runner targets stays the same. That is a huge shift because it means melee investment still matters, but it is no longer supposed to turn knife pressure into an instant answer with very little build commitment. The developer note makes the intent pretty clear. Melee is meant to stay risky and strong, especially when you are contesting close-range weapons like shotguns and submachine guns, but the strongest breakpoints were arriving too early in the progression. So now, if somebody wants that maximum payoff, they need to actually build toward it instead of getting there too easily. In practice, that should make melee builds feel more earned and make fights against them a little more readable. There is also a fix for the Thief class that matters more than it might sound at first glance. Bungie says it fixed additional grapple-related slide cancel movement exploits. That is the kind of change that usually tells you players have found a movement edge case that was letting them chain speed or momentum in a way that was not intended. So this should help clean up movement consistency and reduce some of those weird, hard-to-predict traversal tricks that could give players an unfair advantage. Then there is the Vault and Armory cleanup, which is one of those quality-of-life fixes that sounds simple but can have a big impact on how the game feels. Bungie fixed an issue that could make the Vault and Armory appear empty sometimes. And they also fixed a problem where Armory item refreshes and free daily items would not show up consistently. For players logging in to check loot, manage gear, or grab daily freebies, that should make the whole loop feel much less frustrating and a lot more reliable. Contracts are getting touched too, specifically the Traxxas return on investment 4/5 objective. The in a single run condition has been removed, which is a pretty player-friendly change. Anything that forces a very specific pace or perfect run can turn a contract into a headache, so taking away that single run requirement should make progress feel more natural and less punishing. And finally, there is a fix in Cryo Archive that should save a lot of frustration during exfil moments. Bungie says they fixed an issue where the exfil countdown could reset if the first crew member to enter left the circle, even if the other crew members were still inside it. That is exactly the kind of bug that can ruin a clean extraction, especially when a team is already under pressure. With this fixed, the exfil process should be a lot less brittle and a lot more dependable when the squad actually does the right thing. So overall, this update is not just about raw nerfs or buffs. It feels like a balanced pass with a purpose. Melee is being reined in so it stays scary but does not dominate too easily. Bubble Shield is being reworked into something more situational, movement exploits are getting cleaned up, loot systems are getting more reliable, contracts are less irritating, and extraction logic is being smoothed out so teams are not punished by strange reset behavior. That is the kind of patch that can quietly change the feel of the game in a lot of different ways, especially for players who live in close quarters fights and movement-heavy builds.